I found out my husband was cheating at the exact moment I was pulling the turkey out of the oven, my kitchen smelling like Christmas, and my heart rotting from the inside out. The message popped up on my phone like a silent stab. "Last night was amazing, babe. When can I see you again?" No period, no explanation, just raw proof that someone else was getting what used to belong to me. For a few seconds, I stood there frozen, hot steam hitting my face while an icy chill rose up through my chest. It's strange how the body reacts before the mind does. My fingers went weak, my knees buckled, and suddenly the entire holiday dinner, something I'd spent hours on with love, patience, and tradition, felt like a fake set. A full table that couldn't feed anyone anymore, least of all a betrayed woman. The vibration from the phone kept echoing in my apron pocket, like the lie was begging to be read again. So I read it. Again and again. Each time it hurt differently, deeper, more real, more unbearable. Cheating doesn't show up with dramatic scenes. It shows up in the details, in the routine, in the garlic sizzling in the pan, in the clink of silverware I set out by myself, in a notification that flashes without permission. And right there, in that exact moment of my night, and maybe my life, I felt a question you may have felt too. How do I keep breathing when everything inside me is collapsing? If you've ever had to pretend you were strong while you were breaking inside, hit like, subscribe, and share, because it helps other women not feel so alone. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had a moment where your life felt like it was falling apart while everyone around you kept smiling? While I was still trying to get my breathing under control, I heard his voice from the living room. "Naomi, babe, the table looks amazing. You always outdo yourself." The sound of his voice tasted like metal in my mouth. I turned slowly, but he didn't notice a thing. Derek was glowing, walking around with a glass of wine, admiring every detail I'd put together, from the folded napkins to the lights reflecting in the china cabinet. He looked so light, so effortless, like he was having the best Christmas of his life. And there I was, holding proof that he'd been living another life without me. He came closer and, like he always did, put his hand on my waist automatically, a touch that used to calm me and now turned my stomach. The cruelest part was hearing him use the exact same line he used on me in the early years of our marriage. "You look beautiful tonight." That's what made me certain. The same phrase that was written in the mistress's message. It couldn't be a coincidence. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't me being dramatic. It was cheating, the worst kind. Emotional, intimate, repeated. I gripped the counter so I wouldn't show anything. The truth was still mine, and I needed it whole and quiet until I decided how to use it. While he laughed, joked with Tanya and Elijah, and proudly showed off the house to his own mother, I felt every micro-injustice of the last few years rush back like an avalanche. The veiled criticism, the impatient comments, the subtle control. The times he dismissed my pain, the way he only got kind when he wanted something. The betrayal didn't start last night. It started long before. I just didn't want to see it. My mother-in-law, sitting on the couch with her rigid posture, said to me, "Naomi, you really should have started a little earlier. It took a while for the house to look presentable, but I guess it's acceptable." I didn't respond. For the first time, her little jabs, ones that used to slice me, couldn't find a place to land. I was too full of pain to carry her criticism too. I went back to the kitchen, trying to steady myself, but my body felt like it was moving on its own. The pot bubbled, The spoon tapped the rim in nearly the same rhythm as my heart. Every movement had a new weight, like I was about to make a decision that would change everything. And that's exactly what happened. I picked up my phone, looked at the message one last time, and without taking a deep breath, without hesitating, without thinking twice, I dialed a number no woman should ever have to call on Christmas Day. The voice on the other end sounded surprised, almost guilty. "Hello?" I said only, "Come." "But Naomi, Come now." I hung up before I could hear any excuses. It felt like the floor of my life was rearranging itself, as if the part of me that had always been afraid had finally woken up. The silence in the kitchen felt like a womb about to give birth to the truth. When I walked back into the living room, Derek smiled at me, having no idea I'd just opened the door to his fate. And I smiled back, a light, steady, almost symbolic smile. The smile of a woman who knows, and knows he still doesn't know she knows. The doorbell would ring any second, and the truth would walk in without asking permission. I walked back into the living room in short, careful steps, trying to balance the appearance of normalcy with the silent hurricane moving through me. Dinner was almost ready, the table set with intention and care, but now every detail felt like a cruel reminder of how hard I'd always worked in ways no one ever really noticed. I straightened one of the napkins, folded into a bow, even though it was already perfect. Maybe it was just a way to keep from collapsing in front of everyone. Derek kept roaming the house with that man-of-the-house swagger, showing Elijah the new wine glass he'd bought, talking business, laughing too loud. He looked way too comfortable, almost glowing. It was unsettling to watch how someone who'd shattered another person's heart could still move through the room so light, like the lie itself was a pillow. Every so often, he'd glance at me and wink, thinking he was being sweet, not realizing I was avoiding his eyes because I already knew too well what was hiding behind them. While he went on about how this Christmas would be the best one we've had in years, the smell of scented candles mixed with the food and made a thin wave of nausea roll through me. It wasn't physical, it was emotional. That bitter feeling of knowing I was holding up a whole celebration by myself, one that only looked bright from the outside. My chest felt full of ground glass. And then the micro injustices came back, the kind you swallow for years because you tell yourself, that's just how it is. "Naomi, babe, watch the gravy," Derek called from the living room. "I think it's getting too thick. You know how I like it." I took a slow breath. It was always like this. Never, "Thank you." Never, "This looks amazing." Never, "You did an incredible job." There was always a but, always a correction, always his certainty that I existed to serve him. Tanya came up behind me and lightly touched my arm. "Mom, do you need help?" For a moment, just her touch held me together. My daughter, so strong and so tender, seemed to sense something was wrong before I'd said a single word. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I told her, the lie catching in my throat. Right then, my mother-in-law walked into the kitchen. Marcia loved doing quiet inspections, like she was the keeper of family traditions, and I was her staff. She crossed her arms, scanned every detail, and said in that sweet, poisoned tone, "Derek's always been used to flawless holiday dinners, Naomi. I hope you started early enough. He likes things on time." The words hit me like a slammed door. But this time, unlike every other year, I didn't internalize the guilt. I watched her with a strange kind of distance, almost clinical, like I was seeing all the little wounds I'd endured lined up side by side. "Everything's on schedule, Marcia. You don't need to worry." She nodded like a queen, satisfied with a loyal servant. But for the first time, that posture didn't shrink me. It just showed me the size of the emotional structure that had always been sitting on my shoulders. Back in the kitchen, I stirred slowly. The steam rose hot and touched my face. And there, between the smell of gravy and the distant sound of laughter in the living room, an old memory split my chest wide open. I was about 34 when Derek came home irritated because I burned part of dinner. Nothing major, nothing that couldn't be fixed with another pan, but he looked at me like I'd failed at something essential. "Can't you do anything right today, Naomi?" I remember crying in the shower that night, quiet and hidden, because I didn't want Tanya to hear. That memory came back like a mirror, and I realized I'd spent years accepting emotional scraps, thinking that was normal, thinking I was the problem. But no, I was just exhausted. Exhausted from being invisible to the man who was supposed to be my partner. I glanced at the clock. The guest I'd invited would be here any minute. My heart sped up at the thought, but not from fear, from anticipation. As I adjusted one more plate, Derek appeared in the doorway with his glass in hand. "Naomi, try to smile a little, okay? It's Christmas. You always get way too tense about this stuff." I turned slowly, looked at him like I was seeing him for the first time, and I think that's exactly what it was. "I'm fine," I said. He smiled, satisfied, like he read my soul, when the truth was he couldn't even read my face anymore. I went back to the table. Every fork, every plate, every candle felt like it carried years of silent effort. I built that dinner like someone building an altar, and without anyone knowing, I was also setting the final scene of a play that had gone on far too long. The doorbell rang, and the air changed. The truth was standing on the other side of the door, and this time, it wasn't going to wait for me to be ready. When the doorbell rang, I was already living in a state of alert so quiet and constant that everything inside me seemed to hear and feel the world more intensely. But before that moment, before the visit crossed the threshold, there had been a series of signs. Small ones, invisible to anyone who's never had to truly pay attention. Signs that had been preparing me for the truth. I've always believed that female intuition is like a whisper at the back of the soul. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply warns. And in the weeks leading up to that night, it had been whispering so insistently that I no longer knew whether I was ignoring it out of fear or out of habit. That afternoon, everything clicked. While I was stirring the gravy, I noticed the scent on Derek's blazer when he hung it over the chair. It wasn't mine. It wasn't our fabric softener. It wasn't a smell that belonged in this house. It was lightly floral, slightly sweet, persistent, the kind of fragrance that only clings to a collar after a hug that lasts long enough to be intimate. It hit me like a rewind in time. I remembered the first time I smelled a woman's perfume in his car, years ago, when he swore it must have been a new employee who needed a ride. I believed him, because sometimes loving someone means believing beyond reason. The second sign was more obvious. I noticed how much time Derek was spending on his phone, always angling the screen away when I came near. He'd never been secretive about notifications before, but that week he seemed glued to the device. He smiled at his screen in a way he no longer smiled at me. And then there were the late nights. Very important meetings. Gym sessions that stretched past 2 hours when he'd never lasted more than 40 minutes before. One night he came home with his shirt hastily tucked into his pants like he'd changed too quickly. I asked about it and he laughed. "Relax, Naomi, you always imagine things." But that night, I wasn't imagining anything. I was remembering. As I set the table, I noticed 3 objects that seemed to call out to me symbolically, almost prophetically. 1, the blue ceramic bowl. It had belonged to my mother. She used to say, "The biggest truths don't come with noise, they come in details." That bowl sitting right in the center of the table felt like it was reminding me of that. 2. The wine-stained napkin. Derek had knocked over his glass earlier, and the red stain had spread in an uneven shape, almost like a broken heart. Normally, I would have rushed to replace it, but that night, I left it. Like I was saying, some stains aren't meant to be hidden. 3. The freshly sharpened carving knife. It gleamed under the warm kitchen lights. Not as a weapon, I would never be that woman, but as a symbol. Blades cut. Truth does too. Those 3 objects became my silent companions that night, intimate witnesses to a marriage that no longer existed. While I was adjusting the candles, I heard Derek in the living room saying to Elijah, "This year was tough, but it had its moments. Really good moments, you know?" The word moments snapped through me like a crack of electricity. The way he said it, the pause, the look in his eyes. It was familiar. It was intimate. It was dangerous. That's when my breathing changed. I could hear my own heart, steady and rhythmic, like it was telling me, "You're not crazy. You're waking up." The truth was already inside me. All that was missing was the courage to face it fully. Tanya appeared again, noticing my distance. "Mom, you're acting strange today. Are you sure you're okay?" I gently took her hand. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired." The biggest lie I told that night, and the most necessary one. When I went back into the kitchen, I caught my reflection in the oven door. My eyes, though tired, looked different, more alert, more alive. They were the eyes of a woman who had finally stopped pretending not to see. The phone vibrating in my pocket again confirmed everything. I didn't need to open it. I already knew. The body recognizes the blow before the mind accepts it. And then, with my heart beating steady, the world moving in slow motion, and the certainty that the night would never be the same, I understood there was only one possible path. Let the truth walk through the door. No screaming, no chaos, no emotional violence, because truth has a force of its own. It doesn't need a spectacle, it just needs space. I made that space when I placed that call. And now, only seconds remained before the doorbell would announce the end of one life and the beginning of another. The doorbell rang like lightning, splitting the sky in half. It was a simple, ordinary sound, but it carried a weight no one in that room understood except me. Derek turned his head with mild confusion, almost annoyed, as if trying to remember whether he'd invited someone and forgotten. The expression on his face, calm, confident, comfortable, was the last image of the man he believed himself to be. I walked to the door, feeling my legs steady, surprisingly steady, as if all the fragility I'd carried for years had grown tired of holding the story and finally left me alone with strength. I turned the handle, opened the door, and there she was, Ariel, wearing a simple coat, her face pale, her eyes caught between guilt and fear. She hadn't expected to find the family gathered. She hadn't expected Christmas lights reflecting back at her. She hadn't expected Derek to be there, laughing just seconds earlier, convinced he was safe. The moment our eyes met, her posture shifted. It was as if her own conscience had grabbed her by the shoulders. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I said only, "Come in." And for a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. The first shock hit Derek before Ariel even fully stepped into the room. The color drained from his face, like the blood had given up circulating. The wine glass in his hand tilted, nearly spilling onto the carpet. His shoulders dropped, his eyes widened, and something inside him, something proud, arrogant, untouchable, cracked. "Naogi, what does this mean?" he stammered, his voice hanging by a thread. I closed the door calmly, as if I were simply keeping out the December cold, but in truth, I was locking the truth inside, making sure no one could escape it anymore. Ariel stayed near the door, visibly shaken. Of everyone there, she was the only one who knew exactly why I'd made that call, and still, she looked unprepared to face the weight of her role in all of this. Derek tried to recover. "Naomi, babe, this is a mistake. She shouldn't be here. She must have misunderstood something." That sentence, so familiar in the mouths of men who traumatize women, shattered inside me like broken glass. I walked toward him slowly. "Derek, I didn't think anything. I know." The silence that followed was so heavy, even the Christmas lights seemed to blink more slowly. Tanya stared at me as if she were seeing a version of me she'd never known. Elijah sat up straighter on the couch, alert. Marcia gripped the handle of her purse, too shocked to fake composure. Ariel tried to speak. "Naomi, I'm sorry. But Derek spun toward her with restrained brutality. "No, don't say anything. This is a misunderstanding. Naomi, please, you're overreacting." Overreacting. That word was the trigger. I took a deep breath and for the first time that night, let my voice take up space. Overreacting is you thinking I'd keep believing you after everything. Overreacting is you assuming I'd be so busy cooking and serving that I'd never notice the double life you were living. Ariel clenched her fingers, her eyes shining with tears she was trying hard to hold back. Derek, now desperate, kept going. "Naomi, this isn't what you think. I don't think, I saw." And then came the real twist. Not from my mouth, but from Ariel's. Her voice shook as she finally spoke. "Derek, you promised you were willing to leave her. You said the marriage was dead. You said she didn't care anymore, that she was always too busy for you." The entire room seemed to spin. Derek's eyes flew open. "Ariel, shut up! You don't know what you're talking about." But we did. Everything had been said. I stayed still, but inside, something was being born. A clarity so bright it felt like it lit up every corner of my history with him. "So that's what you told her," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. That I was cold, that I didn't care, that I deserved to be cheated on because I devoted myself to our home, our family, because I didn't live for you? Derek reached for me. I stepped back, and that small step reflected a distance that had existed for years. "Naomi, please, I messed up, but I love you." I raised my hand, stopping him again. "You loved the comfort I gave you, Derek, not me." Ariel was crying, Marcia was in shock, Tanya was shaking with anger, and Derek finally realized I was no longer the woman who swallowed everything just to keep the peace. I finished, "Today, I didn't come to destroy anything. The truth does that all on its own." After what Ariel said, the room sank into a silence so heavy it felt like even the air had given up moving. The truth was exposed, raw, irreversible. But what no one realized, not even Derek, was that the most important moment of that night still hadn't happened. It wasn't the revelation, it was what I was going to do with it. My entire body was shaking on the inside, but on the outside, I was still, almost serene. It wasn't the calm of submission I'd carried for years, it was a different kind of calm. The calm of clarity, of a woman who finally understands the full extent of her pain and her strength. Fear arrived like a whisper. Not the fear of losing Derek. I'd lost that long before the dinner. It was the fear of the void that comes after, the fear of a new life, the fear of admitting that what I'd carried for decades no longer existed. But alongside that fear, something new took shape, a quiet firmness I had never felt before, and that firmness guided me. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table and sat down slowly. Tanya's eyes widened. Elijah straightened on the couch. Even Marcia seemed to snap awake, as if she suddenly realized that watching a woman be humiliated is easy.
But watching her stand up is something else entirely. The moment I sat, Derek panicked. "Naomi, please, don't do this. Let's talk in the bedroom. Let's work this out away from everyone." His voice was desperate. Not for me, for the audience. "Derek," I said calmly, "I spent years talking to you away from everyone, and nothing changed." He stepped closer, frantic, like someone trying to contain a fire that had already spread through the house. "I messed up, Naomi, but we can fix this. You know you can trust me." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Trust you? When exactly did you give me a reason for that? When you lied? When you diminished me? When you came home late repeating rehearsed excuses?" He had no answer. It was rare to see Derek without words. But there, lies had lost the space where they used to grow. Ariel was breathing fast, guilt written all over her face. I looked at her for a moment, not out of cruelty, but out of humanity. She was also a consequence of what he built. Not a victim, but a piece. And I wasn't going to waste my energy attacking someone who never truly held power over my life. My focus was Derek. It always had been. I laced my fingers together on the table, feeling the cold wood against my hot skin. That simple gesture became my emotional anchor. "Derek," I said, looking straight into his eyes, "I don't need to break anything today. You're the one who broke it." He swallowed hard. "I can change, Naomi. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut off all contact. I'll do whatever it takes." His voice trembled. It's strange seeing a man who always believed himself so large now reduced to his own fear. "The problem," I replied, "is that you only want to change because you got caught, not because you were sorry." Marcia opened her mouth as if she might defend her son, but no words came. Maybe for the first time, the truth was so clear, even she felt ashamed. Tanya placed her hand on my shoulder. In her touch, I felt the strength I'd forgotten I had. "Mom, you don't have to listen to this." But I did. I needed to face everything, fully, without running, without softening it. I turned to my daughter and said, "Sweetheart, nights like this don't happen twice. Tonight, I choose myself." Then, drawing courage from my own breath, I turned back to Derek. "I'm not fixing anything tonight." He blinked fast, confused. The truth has already been spoken. My silence now isn't weakness, it's preparation. His eyes filled with fear. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing control. I continued, "Tonight, I stay silent." "Naomi, for God's sake." "Because tomorrow," I said, steady, "I begin to act." The sentence fell into the room like a hammer. I stood up slowly, my body feeling light for the first time in years. It wasn't victory yet. It wasn't revenge. It was something bigger. It was the beginning of my freedom. The living room felt too small for the amount of truth that had been poured into it. The smell of the holiday meal still lingered in the air, mixed with tension, fear, shame, and something new that was finally rising inside me. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was the release of someone who'd carried an entire marriage on her back alone. Whatever it was powerful. Derek stood frozen in the center of the room, staring at me like I was a riddle he'd never even tried to solve. "Naomi, please, let's talk. I know you're hurt, but you're seeing everything out of context." Out of context. The phrase hit the floor like a glass shattering. "Derek," I said, my voice controlled, "there is no out of context when someone cheats. There's only choice, and you chose." He swallowed hard. And for the first time, he had no response. Ariel remained near the door, clearly wanting to disappear. Guilt showed in every movement. Her hands shook, her eyes avoided contact. But there was a sad sincerity there, the kind that comes when someone realizes too late they got involved with a man far more emotionally dangerous than they imagined. Marcia watched with wide eyes, as if her perfect son had been ripped out of its packaging right in front of her. And maybe he had. Of everyone in the room, she was the most quietly shattered. Because seeing the truth takes courage, and for years, she had chosen not to see it. Tanya crossed her arms tightly, anger burning through her. "Dad, how could you?" Her voice cut straight through him. He had never imagined losing the image of the ideal man in his daughter's eyes, and that terrified him. "Tanya, sweetheart, I made mistakes, but..." Mistakes? A mistake is forgetting an appointment, raising your voice. What you did is betrayal. His face flushed, then went pale, then lost all color. And in that moment, I felt a different kind of power fill my chest. Not vengeance, emotional justice. Ariel took a deep breath and delivered the final blow Derek never expected to hear in front of his family. "Naomi, he said you stopped paying attention to him, that the house mattered more than the marriage, that you were always tired, irritated, and that your intimacy faded because you didn't try anymore." I closed my eyes, not from pain, but from confirmation. Lies always travel with cowardice. Derek exploded. "Ariel, stop talking! You don't know what you're saying!" But she did, and everyone did. I inhaled deeply, opened my eyes, and walked slowly to the center of the room. Each step felt like it cracked the ground Derek always believed he controlled. "So that's it, Derek?" I asked calmly. "So you turned my dedication into a flaw, turned my exhaustion into an excuse, turned your choices into my fault?" He stepped toward me. I was confused. I never meant to hurt you, Naomi." I stepped back, and that small, silent step hurt him more than any scream ever could. "Derek," I continued, "you hurt me every day you lied while looking me in the eye. Every day you made me doubt myself. Every day you called my tears exaggeration and my instincts paranoia." His voice broke. "Naomi, I love you." The words echoed hollow. I'd heard that "I love you" so many times that it lost all meaning. Now it was just a plea disguised as affection. "You don't love me, Derek. You love the stability I gave you, the comfortable life I built, the woman who held everything together while you lived your adventures, convinced I'd never find out." He started to cry. Not the deep cry of remorse, but the cry of fear. Fear of losing the narrative, fear of losing comfort, fear of losing his role. Ariel wiped her tears. "Naomi, I take responsibility for what I did. If you need me, I'll tell the truth. I never wanted to hurt you." I nodded, not out of kindness, but out of clarity. She had also been deceived by a manufactured version of him. Derek created parallel realities for each woman, like so many men who believe they'll never be caught. I turned back to him. "Derek, you didn't destroy our marriage yesterday." He lifted his head. "You destroyed it the moment you started replacing me with lies." He fell to his knees, the most symbolic image of the night. "Naomi, please, don't end us." I took a deep breath, air filling my lungs like it hadn't in years. "Derek, we were already over, and only you didn't realize it." Tanya held my arm. Elijah lowered his head in solidarity. My mother-in-law stayed silent, unable to defend her son. And there, in that moment, in the center of the living room where I served love, dinners, birthdays, tears, and effort for so many years, I finally felt whole. Not because he lost, but because I found myself again. After that final confrontation, the living room was no longer just a room. It was an emotional aftermath zone. The Christmas lights blinked slowly, as if they'd witnessed something they were never meant to see. The holiday dinner, still warm, felt absurd, out of place, almost ironic. And me? I was strangely calm. It wasn't emotional numbness, it was clarity. The kind that arrives when a lie finally leaves the space and makes room for real air. Ariel was breathing hard, like someone who had just surfaced from underwater. She looked at me and said, "Naomi, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he said all those things about you. I didn't know you were living like this." I lifted my hand gently, a gentleness I hadn't expected to have in that moment. Ariel, what you did was wrong, but you were deceived too. The difference is that now you know, so go live your life and don't accept emotional crumbs from anyone. She nodded, eyes full of tears, and walked out of the house with unsteady steps. The door closed softly, the sound of a chapter ending. The silence that followed wasn't tense, it was empty. The kind of emptiness that comes after an enormous weight finally drops. Derek was still kneeling on the rug, face buried in his hands, murmuring broken phrases. I can be better. I can change. Don't leave me. I'll do anything. But every word sounded smaller than the one before. It was like his image was deflating in front of everyone, shrinking, collapsing under its own shame. Marcia, always so critical, always quick to point out my flaws, was now silent. Her eyes finally saw her son as a man, not an idol. For the first time, there was real shame there. She took a deep breath and said, Derek, I raised you to be better than this. That sentence hit him harder than anything I could have said. The weight of his mother's disappointment made him crumble again. Tanya walked over and wrapped her arms around my waist, a gesture that mixed protection and pride. Mom, I've never seen you this strong. I'm so proud of you. Hot tears slid down my face, but they were different this time. They weren't tears of pain. They were tears of recognition. My daughter was seeing me for the first time as a woman, not just as her mother. Elijah stepped closer, careful, respectful. Naomi, if you want, I can help you organize everything tomorrow. You don't have to go through this alone. I thanked him, and in that moment, I realized that even though the pain was mine, I wasn't alone. I had support, friendship, presence, things I hadn't felt in years inside my own marriage. I turned back to Derek. Derek, I said firmly, without anger. He lifted his swollen, confused, miserable face. I can explain, he whispered. You don't need to, I replied. The truth has already been spoken. From now on, you'll deal with the consequences of your choices, and I'll deal with mine. Yours, he repeated, stunned. I nodded. My choice is simple. I choose myself. I choose the peace you took from me for years. I choose the life I deserve, not the life you allowed me to have. He tried to move toward me, but Tanya stepped between us, the first time she truly positioned herself against her father. Dad, you need to give my mom space. He froze, because he understood. He hadn't just lost his wife, he'd lost the pedestal he stood on within his family. I took a deep breath. Derek, I'm not solving anything today. I don't want to argue. Tomorrow, I'll make my decisions. Tonight, I want silence. He collapsed again, repeating please like a broken mantra. But it was too late. I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel revenge. I felt emotional justice taking shape. Finally. I walked toward the hallway, but before going into the bedroom, I turned and said, the one who got left behind was you, Derek. I'm moving forward. The Christmas lights reflected in his eyes, and for the first time, he seemed to truly see the woman he had lost. Not the wife, not the cook, not the emotional servant, but the woman who carried an entire life inside her and who had finally stood up. The next morning, the silence in the house was so deep it felt like a new language, one I had never spoken before, yet somehow understood instinctively. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the floor where fragments of my old life still lingered. The table with untouched leftovers, the plates no one ate from, the fallen wine glass Derek dropped when the truth walked in. Everything seemed to tell a story I no longer belonged to. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt something unexpected. Lightness. Not joy, not yet, but a deep, grounded lightness, almost spiritual. Like my body was breathing freely for the first time in years, no longer carrying the burden of holding a marriage together alone. I closed my eyes, touched the necklace my mother gave me on my wedding day, and heard myself think, I survived. Tanya knocked softly on the door and came in with the kind of care only children have when they know their mother is living through something enormous. "Mom, did you sleep okay?" she asked, sitting beside me. I held her hand and smiled, small but real. "I didn't sleep much, but I rested for the first time in years." She took a deep breath, tears in her eyes. "I always thought you were strong, but last night, I saw something else. I saw you being giant, Mom." Her words wrapped around my soul, like my daughter was finally seeing the woman I'd hidden even from myself for so long. We went downstairs together. The smell of food mixed with the quiet of the house carried a strange symbolism, almost as if the kitchen knew this was the last morning of my old life. Derek was sitting at the table, destroyed, red eyes, tear-stained face, wrinkled shirt. A man who'd always controlled everything, now unable to control even himself. He looked up when he saw me. "Naomi, please, we need to talk." The old part of me, the part trained to put his emotions above my own, wanted to stop, listen, soothe. But the new part, the part born the night before, knew exactly what to do. I sat across from him, not as a wife, as a woman. "Derek," I said calmly, "yesterday I heard everything I needed to hear. Today, I'm the one speaking." He swallowed hard and stayed quiet. "I spent years trying to be the perfect woman for you. I cooked, organized, defended you, ignored what hurt me, because I believed family meant patience, that endurance was love, that effort fixed everything." He lowered his head, like a child waiting for punishment. "But last night," I said, "when you fell to your knees, I understood something. You never truly saw me. You saw what I gave you, not who I was." He tried to explain. "I was confused. I didn't want to lose you." I raised my hand. "Derek, you lost me long before the affair. You lost me when you assumed I'd accept anything, when you believed my love was obligated to survive your choices." His eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to lose you, Naomi. I love you." It was hard to hear, because once it meant everything. But now it sounded empty, rehearsed. The automatic line of men who only understand value after they destroy it. "What you love," I said evenly, "is the comfort I gave you, the routine I sustained, the life you had while I exhausted myself for both of us." He began to cry again, loud, desperate. But for the first time, his tears didn't break me, because I knew it wasn't deep remorse. It was fear. Fear of losing what I represented: stability, devotion, structure. I stood up, my legs feeling light, almost grateful. The lightness of finally placing my own name at the top of my priority list. I went upstairs and packed a small bag, just a few clothes. Not because I didn't need more, but because I was only taking what was essential of me. The rest would stay behind in a marriage that was no longer mine. When I came back down, Elijah was waiting by the door, ready to walk me to the car. "Naomi, you're not alone," he said with a quiet certainty. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Before leaving, I looked around the house. The table still set, the lights still blinking, the decorations still shining. But none of it held me anymore. I turned to Derek. He was standing now, crying, lost. "Naomi, please don't go." I took 2 steps towards him, not to comfort, to close the chapter. "Derek, I already left. Today, I'm just taking my body with me." He fell to his knees again, but this time, I didn't fall with him. The door opened. December's cold air touched my face like rebirth. I took a deep breath and crossed the threshold like someone stepping over an invisible border, the border between the woman I was and the woman I now allow myself to be. On the sidewalk, I felt something bloom slowly inside me, a word I hadn't spoken in years. Freedom. And if you, the woman listening to me now, have ever lived through a Christmas, a birthday, or an ordinary Monday where the truth shattered you, hear this with an open heart. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are tired. And tired is not weakness. It's proof you carried too much for too long. And maybe, just maybe, today is the day you start choosing yourself too.